All right, folks, yeah, King football just about back in Western Pennsylvania. And you notice the four-leaf clover over my shoulder. It's there for a number of reasons, but the main reason I always think about my friend Dan Rooney. And I know it's really tough for me, I'm sure it is for many, to think Steeler training camp is here and Mr. Rooney is no longer with us, but he will always be right here in my heart, and that is a fact, folks. And one of the things that I always enjoyed talking to him about was high school football. I mean, we love talking Steelers and business in Pittsburgh, but it was always high school football that brought us together, and we had many conversations. And I used to love to hear his stories about North Catholic and him as a quarterback. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a time that we weren't together that somehow, some way, the topic of high school football didn't come up. So even though my hero and mentor is not here, I'm going to carry the ball and talk a little bit of high school football and something that he and I would have definitely been talking about. The Tribune Review, top 10 WPIL championship, and of course teams of all time. My brother-in-law John Manzetti sent me a link earlier today, and he and I getting ready for this broadcast Wednesday night at Casa de Emmanuel, and I hope that you'll tune in right here for it late Wednesday night, because we're going to talk about his time as a player with Larry Bruno at Beaver Falls, but also the 1960 team, that was the second-year head coach Larry Bruno's championship team, in which they defeated Butler, and Joe Willie Namath was the quarterback. They were 9-0 that year. And I just find it very fascinating, King football, and I found this article very fascinating, and I've been up since very early today working on the computer, as you can see, doing a lot of video work. But the printer shut down, pen to paper, and put some notes down. And here are the top 10 teams from the Tribune Review. Great article, great Skaith company. 1949 Denora, Elwood, they beat 13-0 in the WPIL AA championship game. They ended up at 9-0 on the year. And the 1947 New Kensington team, known as New Ken, 1946 WPIL title winner, and George Cub France, quoted in the article. How cool is that name? You know, through those years he was there, they would play Vandergrift and teams that were significant, those rivalries. And as many as, according to him in that Vandergrift game, 17,000 fans showed up. 1959 Braddock, and of course I've heard many stories about Braddock and have always had a very special place in my heart. And Chuck Klausing, who I've interviewed before, just love the fact that Braddock is such a part of our history. 52-game winning streak, we've heard all those stories, but that game against North Braddock Scott in 1959, two teams that used to actually practice on fields that were only separated by a gravel road. 10,000 fans showed up, and they beat Waynesburg in the title game, 1959 Braddock team, 25-7, and that was at Wash High, Washington High School football field. And here we go, 1960, and my brother-in-law and I, John Manzetti, as a kid, he saw every one of these games, and we'll talk about this team, and guys like Tom Krasminski, who had 54 catches, Carlin Ryan, who went on to Iowa, and also that quarterback, then number 19, long before he was known as Broadway Joe. It was 7th Avenue Joe, as in Joe Namath. They outscored their opponents 305-63. Joe Willie that year, 85 of 164 for 1,561 yards, 12 touchdowns, but he was fleet of foot back then too, folks. I heard he could actually dunk a basketball. He was a great baseball player. He ran for 6 touchdowns that year as well. And you know, Rich Niabala went on to Miami, was the coach at Western Beaver, and one of my early teachers as far as explaining the game, as far as how you could make it really sound better on the radio during his time at Western Beaver, was a guy that kind of kept Joe Namath on the bench until his senior year. He graduated in 59, and we've talked about that 60 team many times. And the late Butch Ryan and I, dear friends, we would talk about that as well. And just about anybody that I have ever met from Beaver Falls, it always goes back to that 60 team. So we're going to talk to John Manzetti about Larry Bruno and that 1960 team coming up Wednesday night from Casa de Emmanuel. Up next, according to the Trib's top 10 WPIL championship teams and teams, because we're going to tell you about a team that's in this category, but, well, folks, did not have the perfect season that many thought they should have. That's still to come. But 1965 Uniontown, they ended up 10-0, and they beat Butler 14-7 at Pitt Stadium in front of 12,500. 1986 Gateway Quad A title team. Well, the year before, they tied North Hills in the WPIL championship game. Didn't have tiebreakers back then, but it was their year in '86 in front of anywhere from 20 to 25,000 at Three Rivers. They beat North Hills Gateway 7-6. 1987, Jack McCurry. Come on, folks. #1 USA Today team. 13-0 record. They outscored their opponents 435 to 26. They, of course, went on to win the Quad A championship. You know, something about that field and that time, and man, that coach, just good stuff. 1988. Now, here's that team that's in the top 10. Well, folks, they were a great football team. Aliquippa had Sean Gilbert, of course, defensive tackle, went on to play at Pitt. 91 solo tackles. But they ran into that team from, well, another part of the state, Berwick, in the state title game, AAA game, and they lost 13-0. But to this day, whenever you're talking Aliquippa football, people always go back to that 1988 team with Sean Gilbert. Then, moving forward, 1994, McKeesport, Brandon Short went on to Penn State, goal line stance against Downingtown, and their great running back, Aaron Harris, 15-0 on the year. They won that game for the state title at Mansion Park, 17-14. And then, last one to tell you about in this top 10 list, 2007 Jeanette team. Of course, Terrell Pryor, now a wide receiver in the NFL, great quarterback at Ohio State. But what they did back-to-back during the regular season, pretty incredible. They beat Aliquippa 70-48 and Beaver Falls 61-12. 12 games, they scored 49 or more points. So there you have it, your top 10, according to the Tribune Review. Thanks to my brother-in-law for that article. A little writer's cramp. And we're back under center and getting ready to go back to work with Rob Pratt Monday night at 7. So until then, have a great day. But again, if you love high school football, please make sure that you join Mr. Manzetti and me right here. Do not touch that dial, because we're going to be talking all about Larry Bruno, arguably, in my opinion, the Valley for sure, #1, but people in Eastern Ohio because of his days playing in East Liverpool, and of course a standout running back at Geneva College as well. A lot of love for Larry Bruno, and we're going to talk all about him Wednesday night. Have a great rest of your day, folks, and until next time, just enjoy.
She says that she's never afraid.